Working in nonprofits tests your faith differently than corporate jobs, and I don't just mean religious faith. When you're literally trying to change the world or at least improve your corner of it, the weight of that responsibility affects everything.
Emotional damage.
Greetings, good day, and welcome. My name is Deanna. On this channel, we talk about all things project management, nonprofit management, grants, and development. Today, I want to talk about something that a lot of nonprofit professionals experience but rarely discuss openly. How mission-driven work challenges your beliefs, your energy, and sometimes even your sense of purpose. But I'm also going to share what actually helps and the real practices that keep me going. Let's get started with talking about the real emotional challenges, and I want to take y'all back to 2020. I had submitted a proposal to Impact 100 Essex on behalf of Butterfly Dreams for $100,000. We got rejected. This was early in my career. I had just started grant writing in 2018, so there was a lot that I was still learning. This was a major funding opportunity for an organization that I believed in with my whole heart and soul. So when I got that rejection email, I was devastated, to say the least. And not just professionally, but personally as well. Because in this line of work, when you're writing grants for nonprofits, it's not as simple as you just asking for money. You're advocating for communities and for people who need support. So when you get rejected, it doesn't just feel like, oh, they went with another proposal. It feels like, damn, these people don't matter enough. But that rejection forced me to learn from failure instead of just feeling bad about it. I took the time and I went back and looked at everything in that proposal that was wrong. What I found is that I told a good story, but I did not back it up with data or stats. I didn't talk enough about the accomplishments and successes that Butterfly Dreams had already achieved. I wasn't intentional enough about not only describing the work being done, but the uniqueness of our execution. Basically, what made us different from other organizations doing similar work. The goals and analysis section, honestly, truly was not strong enough because I did not use SMART goals. Our budget that we put together wasn't as concrete and detailed as it needed to be. We didn't really detail our collaborations or partnerships. And honestly, we had a stronger board of directors the following year compared to when we actually applied. So fast forward in 2021, we applied again. Same organization, same funder, but this time we won all $100,000.
Show me the money.
The success of our proposal the following year validated everything that I learned from the rejection. Mainly, it taught me that rejection in nonprofit work is not judgment on your mission. It's actually feedback on your execution. And that reframe literally changed my entire relationship with grant outcomes. Now, when I get a rejection, I can look at it strategically instead of taking it personally. I can sit back and ask, what can we improve, instead of, oh my God, they don't care about us. Does this work even matter? Like, get it together or forget it forever, Deanna. And I got it together. But what they don't tell you about nonprofit work, it's not just the big rejections that test you. It's the daily grind of those administrative tasks that don't feel like they're actually helping or supporting the mission. Things like compliance reports, budget tracking, the documentation that only matters to a program officer. Like right now, I'm currently working on a compliance report, and I'm sitting here thinking, how does this spreadsheet or this Google Doc connect to the young people that we're serving? How does documenting every line item in a budget actually help anyone? When you got into nonprofit work, you got into it because you wanted to help people. So these admin tasks can feel like obstacles to the real work instead of feeling like support for it. What I've learned, and I have to keep reminding myself of this, is that admin work is mission work, just on a different level. It proves to funders that we are trustworthy stewards of their resources. And that trust enables future funding. Future funding supports the programs. The programs change lives. Like you see, the connection exists. But sometimes I have to slow down and remind myself to see it. On good days, that reframe works easily. I can find meaning in all the spreadsheets minutes and documents because I understand the bigger picture that comes with it. But let's be real. Someday that reframe does not work and admin work just feels like tedious admin work. On those days, I intentionally reconnect with the program side of the work I'm supporting. I'll read impact stories by the young people that we serve, or I'll even review data that actually shows the lives that are being changed. I remind myself why the boring back-end work matters by staying connected to the front-end impact. And then there's the hardest part. The problems that you are working on don't stop at 5 p.m. When your work is doing something like supporting Opportunity Youth, in this instance, I'm talking about the Newark Opportunity Youth Network, and we work with young people between the ages of 16 to 24 who are not in school and not working. Or you're helping nonprofits secure funding for their communities. There is always more that needs to be done. There is always another grant to write. There's always another program that needs support. There's always another young person that needs resources right now. Corporate workers might feel pressure to hit quarterly targets or to close deals, but nonprofit workers feel pressure tied to real human lives and systemic problems. When a corporation misses a target, revenue goes down. When a nonprofit can't serve someone, that person goes without support that they genuinely need. That stake feels real different. And that weight, knowing that your capacity limitations affect real people, that's honestly something that you carry home with you. It affects your work-life balance, your relationships, your mental health. Because how do you turn off caring about homelessness or youth violence or food insecurity at 5 o'clock? This is where my yoga practice becomes essential. I was a yogi before I was a grant writer, and that practice keeps me balanced when the work threatens to overwhelm me. Honestly, yoga isn't just physical exercise for me. It's a mental and spiritual practice that helps me to process the emotional weight of this work. It helps me to stay present and grounded instead of spiraling into anxiety about all the problems that I can't solve. It reminds me that I am a whole person with an identity beyond my work, which is critical when you're in a field where your job is so heavily tied to your values and sense of purpose. Having practices that existed before the work, like my yoga, faith, and community, means that my identity is not completely consumed by the mission. And that separation, that ability to take a step back and remember who I am beyond my job title, that's honestly what makes it possible for me to keep showing up for this work year after year. Now we're going to have the money conversation that nobody ever wants to have. Let's talk about something that makes people uncomfortable. I'm gonna take y'all back to August 2019. At this point, I had been working as a development consultant for Butterfly Dreams for about a year. And at that time, I had gotten 2 offers that represented completely different paths. For offer number 1, I was being presented with an opportunity to be a full-time teacher. I was going to be making over $75K, and of course I have full benefits. On the flip side, offer number 2 was me being presented with an opportunity to be a development fellow for the Newark Opportunity Youth Network. I would be making barely $30,000 and I was getting not a single benefit. However, this would actually keep me on the path of grant writing in addition to letting me learn and grow in the field as well. In case nobody is good at math, that is a $45,000 difference. Damn! And look, man, I don't know about y'all, but for me, that was not a small gap. That's rent, that's bills, that's loans. That's the difference between financial stress and financial breathing room. And I was extremely doubtful about which path I should take. At that point in my life, making $75K would have changed everything. But there was something about that fellowship that just felt aligned to where I wanted to go professionally, even though financially it made no sense. Funny enough, my mom and stepdad had no doubts and they were encouraging me to go with the fellowship. I distinctly remember them saying that they felt like this offer was something ordained by God and that they would support me in this decision. Having that family support, having people tell me it's okay to take something that looked like it was an irresponsible financial risk, that made my decision possible and very clear. Because I'm not going to sit here and act like I made some heroic sacrifice. I had privilege that actually allowed me to take that risk. My family was very supportive. I was living home at the time, so my bills weren't as insane, even though I was looking to move out on my own. I was early enough in my career that I wasn't doing things like having to maintain a mortgage, and the only kid I had was Lady. And honestly, I really had the faith that everything would work out. So ultimately, I decided to go with the fellowship. And by July 2020, I was offered a full-time role with NOYN. And I've been with them ever since. It's just that now I'm a consultant instead of working full-time with them, and it gives me a lot more flexibility. That initial risk paid off professionally. I'm doing work I believe in. I've grown tremendously as a grant writer and a project manager, and I'm building a career that aligns with my values. But I need to be real about what that decision required. Not everyone has a family that can support them through low-paying fellowship years. Not everyone is at a life stage where they can take that type of financial risk. And that is the problem with how nonprofit work is structured. We've created a system where meaningful work is often only accessible to people who can afford to be underpaid. Low nonprofit salaries affect who can afford to work in this sector. If you have student loans, if you have a family that you need to support, if you don't have generational wealth or family safe nets, you might not be able to take that $30,000 fellowship even if you are passionate about the mission. And that means we're losing talented, committed people from communities that nonprofits are supposed to serve, because those same communities often don't have the economic privilege to work for those nonprofit wages. For whatever reason, society has decided that caring about social good should come with financial sacrifice. And to me, that's backwards. It literally undermines the diversity and effectiveness of this entire sector. And then there's the guilt for wanting fair compensation in this line of work. Then you should be willing to sacrifice financially. That wanting a decent salary means that you don't really care about the mission. But here's what I've learned. Sustainable service requires sustainable workers. If I am constantly stressed out about money, I'm not going to be as effective in my nonprofit role. I am going to burn out from all the anxiety and pressure that I am financially feeling. And burnout does not serve anyone. Not me, not the organizations I work with, and definitely not the communities that we're trying to support. So I've had to reframe what calling means. Being called to this work does not mean martyring myself financially. It means finding ways to continue to do this work sustainably, which includes advocating for fair compensation, setting boundaries around scope creep, and being honest about what I need to show up effectively. It means I understand that I am more valuable to the mission when I am not constantly struggling. Speaking of sustainability, let's now talk about sustainable service as strategy. So, how do you actually sustain yourself in this work? Not as an aspiration or something that you hope to figure out eventually, but as a daily practice that helps you keep going. First, I connect with other people also doing nonprofit work. Not just casual friendships, but intentional community with people who understand exactly what it is that I'm going through. As much as I love my friends, they do not work in this sector. So when I tell them about a rejection, they understand how much it sucks and they'll be like, sorry, Deanna, that's mad whack, but we just move on. However, when I tell another nonprofit professional about that rejection, they absolutely get it. They understand the emotional weight, they've experienced similar rejections, and they could be a resource for me in ways that general support can't. This community validates my experiences in a way that's essential for my mental health in this field. When I am questioning whether or not I'm actually cut out for this work, they remind me that the challenges I'm facing are systemic, not personal failures. When I am in need of practical solutions, like how to approach a difficult funder conversation or how to restructure a budget, they have actual experience to share. Like I said, I love my friends, but I be needing my nonprofit community. Second, I turn to God. And I need to keep it a hundo with you guys, because you know I'm always going to keep it a hundo. I have not been intentional with connecting with my Heavenly Father as much as I used to. I've let the busyness of the work crowd out the spiritual practices that sustain the work. For the current times that we are in, myself and the entire philanthropy sector need Him now more than ever to keep sustaining and keep doing the work that we have been called to do. Now more than ever, we need to keep reminding ourselves why we are here, that there's work that needs to be done, and that the work will always be good because He made it as so. It's easier to talk about faith when you are consistent in your practice, but I think it's more honest to acknowledge that I am struggling to maintain this relationship. This work demands so much, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, logistically, that the thing that is supposed to sustain me through this work sometimes gets deprioritized. And then I wonder why I'm feeling burnt out or losing sight of purpose. So this is me being real about the fact that even knowing what helps, actually doing it consistently is a challenge. What spiritual grounding provides when I'm actually practicing it consistently is truly something that other coping mechanisms can't. It reminds me that this work is so much bigger than me, that I'm a part of a larger purpose, and that outcomes aren't entirely dependent on my individual capacity. It literally takes the pressure off in a way that nothing else does. Because when I am operating purely from my own strength and wisdom, everything feels overwhelming. I do not have the strength to do this work on my own. So why do I keep doing that? But when I am connected to something larger, I can hold the work more lightly while still taking it seriously. Third, I focus on the change I can see and the people I can help, while also accepting that I may never see the full impact of the work. This is about managing expectations and finding incremental progress instead of waiting for a dramatic transformation that might never come. Let me give you a concrete example. Before I joined the Newark Opportunity Youth Network, an individual donor base was not something that they were focused on. As I grew their organization and started cultivating individual donors, this young woman found us. She connected deeply with the work that we were doing with Opportunity Youth in Newark, and she used her voice and her connections to raise money for our young people. When we had found out what she'd done, and none of us had no idea that she was doing this fundraiser, I felt super validated. We went from having no individual donors to a 50% increase in our individual giving. And honestly, more than just the money, what hit me is that people are truly seeing this organization and they are going out of their way to support it. They're understanding how valuable and essential this work is, particularly for this population, and they are supporting it. That right there is the kind of impact that keeps you going. When your work creates ripple effects that have not been predicted, when people that you've never even met decides that your mission matters enough for them to advocate for it themselves. These moments remind me that the work matters even when I can't see the outcomes. Grant writing is behind the scenes work. I write the proposals, secure the funding, and manage the reporting. But I'm not usually the one that's delivering the direct service. services. So sometimes it's real easy to feel disconnected from impact. But stories like this remind me that I am a part of something bigger than my individual capacity. My work enables programs. Those programs change lives. Those changed lives ripple out into communities. I might not see the end result, but I am a link in the chain, and that matters. And on the days when I doubt if any of this makes a difference, because even all these years later, those days still happen, even with all the practices and reframing that I do. I remember the alternative, aka not trying, is definitely not going to create the change that I want to see. Doubt is normal. It's recurring, not something that I solve once and move on from. Some days the mission feels clear and the work feels meaningful. Other days I am questioning everything. But even on the doubtful days, I can still take the next action. I can still write the next proposal. I can still manage the next project. I can still show up for the next meeting. I've said this before, and I'm gonna say it again. Imperfect action beats perfect inaction every time. The last piece is boundaries. And I mean actual boundaries, not just saying the word. For me, that means protecting my yoga practice even when deadlines are tight. It means being honest with the organizations I work with about my capacity instead of overcommitting and under-delivering. It means accepting that my limitations, the fact that I can only work so many hours, that I can only take on but so many projects, that I can only give but so much emotional energy, those limitations do not make me a bad person or a bad nonprofit professional. Just like with salaries, I used to think boundaries were selfish, especially in mission-driven work where the needs are urgent and ongoing. But what I've learned is that boundaries make me much more effective, not less. When I take the time to protect my time and my energy, when I'm honest about what I can and can't do, I show up much better for the work that I've committed to. I make fewer mistakes, I am much more creative, I'm more present, and I model for others, especially for younger nonprofit professionals who are watching how I navigate through this work. So these are not just self-care tips that I'm sharing because they sound good. These are strategies that directly serve the mission. Community, faith, focus on visible impact, and boundaries. These are not luxuries for nonprofit workers. They're requirements if you want to do this work long-term without burning out spectacularly and leaving the sector entirely. Sustainable service is mission critical. Now let's have a quick wrap up and final thoughts. Working in nonprofits will test your faith, your boundaries, your financial planning, and your mental health. That's not a bug in the system. That's what happens when you care deeply about problems that are bigger than yourself. If you're experiencing any of these challenges, that does not mean you're not cut out for the work. It means you're doing mission-driven work, and mission-driven work is hard. These struggles are not personal failings. They are shared experiences across the entire nonprofit sector. What we need to do is talk about them openly instead of pretending that the passion for the mission is going to sustain us indefinitely, because it's not. The goal isn't to eliminate the challenges. I honestly don't think that's possible as long as we're working on urgent, complex problems with limited resources. The goal is to develop practices and perspectives that allows you to serve sustainably instead of burning out spectacularly. Because burnout doesn't just hurt you personally. It hurts the organizations that you work with, the communities that you serve, and the broader movement for social change. The sector needs people who can stay in the work long term. People who can build expertise and relationship and institutional knowledge over years and decades. Not just people who give everything they have for 2 years and end up leaving because they are depleted. My current approach to balancing mission commitment with personal well-being is imperfect and evolving. Some months I'm better at maintaining boundaries and spiritual practices. Other months I slip back into overwork and anxiety. But overall, the trend is toward more sustainability, more acceptance of my limitations, more trust that the work can continue without me having to push myself into exhaustion. And honestly, that's what I hope for everyone in this field, everyone in any field. Not perfection, but progress towards approaches that allow you to keep showing up each and every day. Oop, would you look at that? You made it to the end of this video, so thanks for watching.
Sometimes goodbyes are a bitch.
T-shirt idea. Goodbye stink.
If you work in nonprofit work, I would love to hear about any challenges that you are facing and the things that you do to overcome them. What are the practices that actually keep you grounded? Even if you are not in nonprofit work and you feel like you are struggling to see your purpose in everyday life in the work that you are currently doing, how do you overcome that thought? What are the practices that actually keep you grounded? How do you process rejection in your field or manage the emotional weight of the work that you do? If you are considering nonprofit work, let me know what questions you may have about the realities beyond the mission statement. Is there anything you want to know before you enter this field? Whatever it is, make sure to drop that in the comments below. As I always say, a lot of my videos are inspired by you guys, so if anybody has any topics or questions that you would like me to dive deeper into, make sure to drop that in the comments as well. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, bye y'all.